Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophets Speak. This is Isaiah Yeshayahu 30a, and I am Saul Weinreb, your host for this podcast. In the last two chapters, 38 and 39, it started with the word hoi, woe. And those were parts of this series where the chapters begin with that word. The first one, the hoi, was an announcement, a warning to the people of Ephraim, of the northern kingdom. The second hoi was aimed at the people of Judah. This one, which is actually the fourth, because in the middle of chapter 39 there was another hoi to people that don't take God seriously. But now he's aiming at the people of Israel. It is debatable exactly when this occurred, because Yeshayahu in chapter 30 is criticizing the Jewish people for looking towards Egypt and going down towards Egypt for strength, making an alliance with Egypt. There's various opinions as to exactly what time in history Yeshayahu was referring to or prophesizing about. But as I have until now, I'm not going to focus too much on the exact event that he's talking about. I'm going to focus much more on the idea and the message that he's trying to teach us. So if you'd like to know more about which event, feel free to look at the commentaries. But here we're going to concentrate on what is Yeshayahu trying to teach us. So I want to give another little bit of introduction here. Several times we've seen Yeshayahu's foreign policy. That's what I've been calling it. And Yeshayahu is pretty consistent in that he wants the people of Judah, the Jewish people, to understand that they have a reason and a purpose and a message which is worth standing up and fighting for, and that they should be ready to defend themselves by themselves because they're fighting for a purpose, an idea, and a reason. And an alliance is only good if the alliance is together with people or countries or nations that share that idea. But when one makes an alliance and depends on another nation that shares values that are not consistent with and contradictory to the values of the Torah, Yeshayahu is always against such alliances. Keep that in mind as we study this criticism here. The first half of the chapter is Yeshayahu criticizing the Jewish people for depending on Egypt. The second half, which we're going to study in 30b, is where he talks about the beauty of when we rely on ourselves, meaning on God. Hoi banim sorim no'am Adonai. Woe is, or hear you, children that are wandering away, rebellious, says God. Lasot et savolomini. You are taking counsel, but you're not taking my counsel, says God. Linsoch masecha v'lo ruchi. You are making things, but these are not my spirit. These are not the things that I want. Leman sefot chatat al chatat. You are adding sin upon sin by doing what you're doing. Ha'alchim loredet Mitzrayim. And Yeshayahu is very specific. I am criticizing you, those of you that are going down towards Egypt. Ufi lo sha'alu. You didn't ask me. You didn't ask me, the prophet, or me, God, my advice. La'oz b'ma'oz paro. Instead, you're going to try to get strength in the strength of Paro, of Pharaoh. V'lachsos b'tzel Mitzrayim, and take shelter in the shadow of Egypt. V'haya lechem ma'oz paro levoshes. And I am telling you that this strength you're trying to seek in Egypt, it will end up being an embarrassment for you. V'hechasut b'tzel Mitzrayim, and that which you are trying to take shelter in Egypt, lechlima, will be klima is like an awful kind of embarrassment and shame. Note that it uses the term shame, not destruction. You will be embarrassed that you went to Egypt to ask for protection. You will be ashamed because you will see that you're relying on them and they can't be trusted. For his princes, or his sarim, his officers are and so on, and his messengers or ambassadors reached to Chanes, the city of Chanes. However, They came to talk to you. Khanes is a city near the southern border between Egypt and Israel. They came to talk, they came to make these deals, but when you go down there, you're going to find out that they can't be relied upon. It will be an embarrassment. Kol hovish al am lo yo'ilu. They will all be ashamed you will all be ashamed because you relied on a nation that will not help you, lamo. Lo le'ezer v'lo laho'il. They won't give you any aid, they won't give you any help, just won't help. Ki levoshes v'gam lecharpa. The only thing you're going to get from them is embarrassment and shame. Maso bahamot negev. Maso, we have learned until now, I've always been translating as a burden. This is a burden upon you. Because why? You decided to go through the vast desert, the Negev desert, in all parts of what we call today the Sinai Peninsula, which was a wilderness full of those animals, and Beretz Tzora V'Tzuka, in a land of troubles and anguish. It's dry, it's parched, it's dangerous terrain. There's wild animals, Laviv Elayish Mehem. There was lionesses and lions. Efev V'Soraf Ma'ofeif. These are serpents and poisonous snakes. Remember, in those days there were Asian lions there. They're no longer today, but they once inhabited that region. Yisu al Kesef, and you go and you carry on the shoulders of Ayorim Chelehem all of your weapons on mules, V'al dabeshes gimalim, and on camels, Otzrasam, your treasures, Al Amilo Ilu. You traveled through with all of your stuff on these donkeys and camels, braving all this terrible wilderness, all to go down to Egypt, which they're not even going to help you. What an embarrassment, what a shame. Umitzrayim hevel v'rik yazoru. They will help you like nothing. They will help you like absolute nothingness. L'chein karasi lazos. That's why I called this, says God, Rahav Heim Shavet. Rahav has numerous translations. It could mean strength. I'm choosing the translation that many use, that it means arrogance and pride. Rahav Heim Shavet. You live in arrogance. You are sitting and living in arrogance, because you refuse to listen. You go through all of this just to go to a place that they're not even going to help. Ata, now, says God to Isaiah, Bo katva alu achitam. Go write this down on a tablet. Bial sefer chukah. Write it down in a book. Utihili yom achron adalam. So everyone will see from now on, and you'll be able to say, I told you so. I said don't rely on Egypt. You didn't listen. It'll be written down so they won't be able to say, oh, you never told us. Ki amarihu, why? Because they are a rebellious nation. Banim kechashim, they're children that are a bunch of liars. Banim lo avushim atarat Adonai, they did not bother to listen to the Torah of God. What did they want to do instead? They didn't want to listen to the prophets like me, like Isaiah, like Yeshayahu, and the other prophets of God. Asher amru l'roim, they told those seers, lo tiro, don't see for us visions, v'lachozim, and the seers of the future, lo tachzu lanu nichachos, don't tell us the things that are important, the things that are correct. We don't want to listen to those. Those are too hard. Dabru lanu chalakos, tell us the easy stuff. Chazu mahatalot. See visions that are foolish. Obviously, the Radak points out that it's not that they said to the false prophets, see things that are foolish, but rather Isaiah is saying that people were asking the false prophets, tell us the easy stuff. And they, of course, obliged the easy things. They were delusions. It would be another translation of the word mahatalot. Suru mine derech, hatu mine orach. Get out of the way, they would tell the true prophets of God. We want to go to Egypt. Get out of the way, you guys are an obstacle. Hashbitzu mipaneinu. Get rid of yourselves from before us, as Kedosh Yisrael. Get rid of God. We don't want God in front of us. God is an obstacle. We want to go to Egypt. Leave us alone. L'chein, therefore, Ko Amar Kedosh Yisrael, that the Holy One of Israel, God Himself, this is what He's going to say. Ya'an ma'aschem adavar hazeh, because you have despised this Torah, and instead you despised the Torah, which is what makes you special, which is why you should stand on your own and defend your values, the things that are really important. And instead, vativtuchu, you had faith, ba'oshek v'nalos, vatishanu alav. You had faith in what? You had faith in the oppression of Egypt, in the disgusting things of Egypt. Fatishanu love, you want to rely on them. This is the key. This verse here, verse 12, is the key to the whole thing. Why is it that Yeshayahu was criticizing them for going down to Egypt? Egypt are contradictory, and by relying on them, then the entire fight loses its morals. Everything you're relying on them for protection is lost, because you're relying on someone who believes in and preaches and lives values that are contrary to the Torah, to what God wants you to know. And what are those things? Oshek, oppression. Egypt thrives on oppression and slavery and so on and so forth, things that the Jewish people should not stand for. We stand for the opposite of oppression. We stand for tzedek u'mishpat, justice and righteousness. Lochein, therefore, because you chose this, in verse 13, Yeh lochem ha'avon hazeh, this sin of relying on them instead of me, says God, keferetz nofel, it's going to be, instead of a wall of protection, it's going to be like a wall that collapses with breaks and smashes in it. Niv'eh b'choma niskava, it's like as you look at a huge wall which has a bubble coming out that's like about to burst. Asher pitom lefesha, which suddenly all of a sudden smash, the whole thing comes down. Ushuvara keshever navel yotzrim, and it's such a dramatic smash. It smashes like a clay vessel, smashes into little pieces. Katut lo yachmol, it will be smashed into little pieces without anything left. V'lo yimatzei b'michtaso cheres lachtosh eish miyakud. There wouldn't even be a tiny piece of any use. The pieces are so smashed, so small, you can't even have a piece that could be used to carry a coal out of the flame, v'lachsof mayim migava, or scoop water from a puddle. That's how smashed it will be. I'm going to stop here at the first half of chapter 30. The second half is a lot more cheerful than the first half, and we'll study that in 30b, where God says what they should do and what would happen if we do rely on God instead of relying on the oppression of Egypt and the society that they stand for. Thank you so much for joining us for 30a. Looking forward to finishing chapter 30 with you in the next podcast.